We should meet there. Hi everyone, welcome to another NLP Insider Live show, and thank you so much for joining us. We will be here live every other week for 15 minutes to talk about everything NLP with industry insiders. My name is David Talby, and I'm the CTO of John Smollett. Today, I'm very excited to welcome Kira Radinsky, CEO and CTO at Diagnostic Robotics. Together with her team, Kira uses advanced technologies in the field of AI and NLP make healthcare better, cheaper, and more widely available. In the past, she co-founded Sales Predict, which was acquired by eBay and served as the Director of Data Science and Chief Scientist for eBay Israel. She also worked at Microsoft Research, where she developed predictive algorithms to recognize early warning signs of globally impactful events, including political riots and disease epidemics. Kira is giving a note at the upcoming Healthcare NLP Summit on April 5th and 6th. Today, she's here to share her insights and give us a small preview of what. Kira, can you maybe introduce yourself a bit to the audience?
Sure. So hi, everybody. I'm Kira. I'm the CEO of Diagnostic Robotics. As a background, I started my career mostly working with different aid organizations as part of my work in Microsoft Research, building systems who predicted the first cholera outbreak in Cuba in 100 years, the Sudan riots in 2013, then built a company who was doing economic B2B predictions, sold it to eBay, been eBay chief scientist from Israel, been building economic B2B systems inside eBay, almost getting to improvements of $700 million in revenues per year. And a few years back, came back to Israel and met my two co-founders, Professor Moshe Shoam. He IPO'd a couple of companies in healthcare, and we decided that we want to do something really big and impact the lives of many, many people. And this is how Diagnostic Robotics was born.
Inspiring. So you've worked in you worked in sales, you worked in e-commerce, in finance. What do you find exciting specifically about using AI in healthcare?
Beyond the technological challenges, it's about making one person healthy. And again, what I wake up every morning is thinking about the fact that, as we chatted before, in the next 10 years, we're going to have 3.8 billion people without access to primary care. This is crazy. If you think about this, the 3.6 hours that we're waiting right now on average inside the emergency departments will quickly become 8 hours, like it is in certain areas, for example, in China. We don't have any other choice but to start bringing digital health more and more into healthcare. Otherwise, we're in survival mode. We have no other choice. So for the last years, we started obtaining more than 60 billion historical visits with physicians, emergency departments, hospitals, and building AI systems and natural language processing systems that can read this, identify patterns of patients who are deteriorating, and try to stop this before they deteriorate. Anything to do with proactive care.
Very interesting. And yes, and I agree with you. I think it's one of those problems that everybody sees coming, right? Because it's demographic, right? As you say, that really at least a third, if not half of humanity will not have access to very, very basic human services, and we are not nearly training enough doctors to be able to meet that basic human right need. Absolutely. So which of the biggest challenges in healthcare do you see as AI and NLP actually help with?
Beyond just running on structured data and mapping this to ontologies, if you actually try to understand triaging, you need to understand not only keywords. For example, there's a headache. You need to understand not only the headache itself, but where it is, how strong it is, how much time it was. Then mapping this to some of the previous historical visits physicians were doing and correlating this with their decision. One of the biggest challenges I saw is there's a big distribution change between one physicians are writing and what they're asking from the patients. It's a huge gap. I'll give you an example. If you ask the patient, is this the worst headache of your life when they're inside the emergency department? They will say, yes, this is why I'm inside the emergency department. However, okay, it's not what the physician meant. The physician was trying to actually decide if it's a stroke or not. So when they will be talking to the patient, they will say, is this the feels like a hammer hitting your head? So if you only learn from medical summaries, you will never try to mimic the right questions the patient should be asking. So a lot of the things are still need to be done prospectively. That's one challenge. The second challenge is we see a lot of solutions trying to treat a patient from the lens of a single disease, trying to predict if their diabetes will deteriorate. This is very wrong. Eventually, looking at a patient more holistically and applying causal approaches from all of the possible interventions and their combinations, what is the right one for this patient to actually help them is the right way of going. However, we need to remember in healthcare specifically, what we need is more speed to the market. How to do those prospective experiments much quicker because the distribution changes between what's going on in real life and the retrospective data is huge.
Interesting. I'm curious, how do you deal with biases in data or cases really you just don't have data about the patient because they don't have enough access to the healthcare system?
Mhm. So we have been building several bias-aware systems, making sure that when we rank patients for clinical care, we do not bias against certain conditions. How do we do this? We go through all possible combinations and check for different types of demographic parity, statistical parity, and others. When we also work on mining medical literature, there's a lot of bias there as well.
Mhm.
Till 93, women were not included in clinical trials. And afterwards, even if the FDA mandated it, most trials are not aware of the fact of what is the right prior of women in the population and how many are included in the clinical trials. This creates a big gap in our understanding of how, for example, you treat certain genders, races, and others. So, what we started building from an NLP perspective are bias aware embeddings. In other words, making sure that we see how many women and men were participating in the trial and adapting the embeddings based on this. After we started doing this, we started seeing that healthcare tasks like readmission prediction, ICU readmission predictions, and others have been improving by more than 15 to 25% by
Mhm.
applying those descaled embeddings, which are bias aware.
Very interesting. So you're the CEO and CTO at Diagnostic Robotics. Can you tell us a bit more about the solutions you're to solve these challenges and what impact you are seeing with patients?
Sure. So we're building a platform for running, executing, and measuring clinical programs, predicting which members are deteriorating, but there is still something you can do now. We've been building a set of algorithms to even look at the data and say, if we would have treated this in time, could it have been prevented? Once we know this, we bring down the risk of the patients. We're not saying this patient is at risk, we're saying why. Is this their obesity, smoking, physiotherapy non-compliance, primary care physicians? Behind the scene, we also have a lot of control groups and treatment groups, and we do propensity matching, making sure that we match the right intervention, but also measure the clinical ROI happening behind the scenes. In addition to this, just relying on patient historical data to make prediction is not enough. So we started applying different types of chatbots to obtain additional information, clinical protocols from the patient. And behind the scene, we've been building what is the right questions to ask the patient so we can boost our proactive algorithms to make much more concrete information about what's the probability of this patient to be engaged and successful with different clinical interventions.
Mhm.
We've been applying the system on 28 million patients on a monthly basis in the United States.
Interesting. Do you have any initial results on the impact to these patients?
Yes. So in large prospective trials running more than a year, we've shown in treatment control groups that we were able to reduce almost by 4 times the cost of those patients, reduce by 3.2 times the number of avoidable events. And if you look specifically, we had a scalable approach for CHF patients. We saw that we were able to save them on average 0.7 an inpatient visit on average per patient, which is quite significant. It also has an ROI from an economic point of view, more than $20,000 per member per year. But think about the life of the patients that you save them a single inpatient visit, which can only deteriorate them more and more after one inpatient to another.
Yeah, and that's super inspiring, right? So there are quite a few people are happily walking around thanks to your work and your team's work. That's why we do it in healthcare, absolutely. So, Kira, you'll be giving a keynote at the NLP Summit coming up on April 5th. What can the audience expect from your presentation?
So you're going to learn about how we match the distribution changes between prospective and retrospective trials. You're going to learn how we actually adapt mining all PubMed literature to build those clinical triaging capabilities, and eventually what works and what doesn't work when you actually build machine learning pipelines to predict clinical outcomes of patients in a much more holistic way. And a lot of causal inference, that's the new thing.
Okay, that's it's a lot to deliver in 20-minute keynote. So I think you've definitely set good expectations here. I look forward to it.
Us as well, and hopefully it will get more and more people into this very important field.
Absolutely. I think there's so much we can do, and so many people we can help. I think really, the more people we can get engaged within, healthcare AI. I think many people underestimate how big the impact to human life and suffering can be. Absolutely. So thank you again, Kira, for joining us today. Everyone, be sure to catch Kira's keynote session, as well as more than 30 other amazing talks from industry leaders focused on natural language processing, best practices, case studies, and challenges as they in applying those technologies in practice, using the latest open source libraries, models, and transformers that you can use and apply today. We'll drop a link to register to the Healthcare NLP Summit on April 5th and 6th here, so be sure to register today. Kira, thank you very much for joining us today. I really enjoyed our chat, and best of luck in your continued journey.
See you everybody soon.